guys, it's Syama Meaghar here, CEO of Scaling Retail, and I'm so excited to be able to share with you the ways to go about building an online business in today's market. I know it can be so ambiguous out there. Maybe you have an online retail store, maybe you're considering being an entrepreneur for the first time and you're wondering what are some of the best practices and how do I go about doing this in the most efficient and effective way? We're living in crazy times. It used to be that we would go to trade shows and we did very little business over the internet. We did very little business, at least on the wholesale side, buying online. However, the industry has been moving in that direction for the last 5 years. Now, while there's been a little bit of resistance in adopting to those platforms in earlier years, this day and age, we're so grateful that these platforms have been established because now we can actually use them and be able to build and grow businesses in a way that's very digital friendly. Now, today we're going to go over all the different components in terms of what's going to be the pros and cons of starting an online business, how you're going to navigate the trade show versus the online experience, how you're going to be taking a look at inventory control and how do you inventory manage at all, right? Sometimes we wonder, like, how do we keep stock of this? How do we look at the sell-through reports? We're going to talk a little bit about that today, and then how to test and innovate and be able to pivot online. Lastly, guys, we're going to close out with some online strategies on how you can start to make those strategic buys for yourself. How do you go about thinking about assortment planning and buying in this new online environment? Okay, so let's jump in. First topic, expectations versus reality when starting an online business. Now, I really hate Shopify and secretly love them because they made it too easy to be able to start a store online. The biggest issue that I have with Shopify is you can really turn on the switch and say, I'm in business. Now, one of the challenges with that is it really takes away from the reality of what happens when you start an online store. Everything from your brand positioning, meaning what do you stand for? What is your content going to look like? What's the product you're going to be selling? All of that background analysis and looking at how you're planning kind of gets thrown out the window when you realize that for $29.99 a month, you can just have an online shop. We've also been hearing so many stories of people who are like, yeah, you can just start a drop shipment program and there are these plugins and you can just quickly start the store. It is not that easy. When starting an online retail store, it's super important for you guys to be thinking about your customer positioning, who you're going to be targeting to, and ultimately, guys, your business as a media company. When you are a digital brand, you are a media brand. And that means that you're planning on creating content for social media, content for your newsletter, content for your website, and then really, guys, whatever packaging is going to go in the mail, right? That's content too. How are you going to be engaging your customers 360? What kind of digital advertising are you doing? Digital and online collaborations. These things need to be planned for. And guess what? They're not cheap. So one of the biggest misconceptions that I hear when people want to start an online store is that it's somehow budget friendly. Honestly, starting an online store can be just as expensive as having a really productive brick and mortar store because it's all about traffic and eyeballs, people walking in, people going on your site. And it has really very little to do with the total amount, but has a lot to do with how you choose to allocate those resources. So what should you be expecting? Well, if done the right way, you're probably going after, let's say, your first buying season coming up for, this fall winter market or maybe spring summer market. And you're saying, okay, these are the items I think I'm going to buy. If it's your first time buying for your store, you need to be asking yourself, what are the brands out there, the kinds of products that my customer is really going to be looking for? Remember, having an online store isn't about saying this is my taste. Having an online store is about saying, hey, customers, here's how you see yourself on our platform, and here's your taste reflected through my curation. It's symbiotic, right? That has to work together. One of the things I hate to hear the most from first-time retail stores is like, yeah, I have great taste. So of course I'm going to be able to have this store and sell all the stuff that I like. Customers don't exactly work like that, right? It's like, imagine being a fashion designer and saying, I'm just going to design things that I like, and customers, you can buy it or not. You're really not thinking customer centric. At that point, you're thinking more self-centric and me-centric. So as you're looking to build out your platform, give yourself time. If you're in the very infancy stages, you want to be thinking about when you're launching, the categories you're launching with, how many brands you want to be launching with, and start to understand that customer positioning. What are the things that are very important to them? What else do they do with their time? How do they spend their money, right? Aside of just buying those brands that you're carrying, what else can you bring to them? So budgeting, planning is super important, and then starting to check off those lists of all the resources that you need to get yourself launched. So the first thing is a brand DNA. Who are you? What do you stand for? You need to then build your communication strategy. So how do I take that brand DNA, reflect it outwards into the world and build a comm strategy? Then you're also gonna be building the website. Now, templates, I think, are a wonderful thing to start from, but everyone knows when a company is using just a templatized website. You wanna make sure you have a really good graphic designer and creative director who can actually help you develop something that's gonna be more unique and original. You're also going to be planning at that point in time what your campaign photo shoots are. Now, in a time when people are social distancing or they're not doing as many photo shoots, it's not to say it's not possible, but it's not going to be as easy. Everyone's coming to the table with their own level of comfort. It's really important that you do what's best for yourself, but also what's good for the people around you. So when you're thinking about curating those photo shoots, you might have to get really creative. How do you start to think about doing product flat lays? How do you start thinking about sending goods out and maybe having your friends wear them? I have to tell you, budgeting and production are one of those things that are so important, but also have the greatest flexibility in terms of what customers are expecting. But you have to think about it. It has to be strategic. Everyone knows when it's sloppier when you're trying to sell a $500 product that looks like it's worth 99 cents. So make sure you're not falling into those extremes. Now, back to expectations of what you should be planning on. The moment you actually have your website ready to go, copywriting, art direction, you have your marketing agency that's going to be helping you with all of the digital placements. You have your social media planning. Now it's time to hit go. Most people underestimate the power of public relations, right? When it comes to public relations, it's super important to be able to get people on your team so they can help amplify and get the word out. Without having a good public relations team, you're really relying on all of your friends. I gotta tell you, as I've gotten older, I think I have less friends, right? I don't go out as much. So unless you're super social, which you maybe aren't right now, you wanna be thinking about how you can be bridging those relationships in order to get more visibility. Strong PR strategy combined with content and digital marketing are really going to be the ways in which you're going to be able to launch this brand. So some people are walking in saying, I want to start an online business because it seems like it's easy and I can make money and everyone's shopping online. But the smart people are saying, okay, I want to do this, but it might take me 6 to 9 months before I launch. And when I launch in this way, I'm being strategic about it. I'm not launching it hoping it's going to be my carryover cash for the next year. I'm launching it knowing this is the direction of my business and I'm modeling it for a long-term plan. So now let's turn our attention to how on earth you're going to procure the product. Used to be, guys, in the past, we would be in market all year round. In fact, it was exhausting, but super fun, right? Gotta love market in Paris, going to Vegas, going to New York, London. It's so much fun to be able to experience this world of product. It is a true passion of mine. I love being able to touch and feel fabrics. I love being able to see the ways in which things are going to merge back to each other. Discovering new brands, right? Trade shows are great for discover. And so what I think is so important to realize is we are now being challenged to be thinking of the ways in which we can assimilate to new buying strategies. And when we're thinking about these new buying strategies, what's really amazing to find out is that there are platforms that have been created to help us at specifically this time and this moment in the retail industry. So one of those platforms that I think is really fascinating is FashionGo. They've become a real destination for multi-categorical contemporary purchasing. Wow, that's a mouthful. If you guys have been over to the Vegas trade shows, you've probably seen their booths. But when we start to think about the value of an in-person trade show versus a digital trade show, we have to really look at this not in terms of, again, picking one over the other, but how can we leverage what we're working with in order to actually support the business further. So while I love online trade shows and I also love in-person trade shows, it's really important to ask yourself, how do I replicate this feeling of touch and feel and discovery in a digital platform? And so guys, when you're approaching that kind of buying decision, you're gonna have to go through something pretty methodical. Step one, understand your assortment plan. So what are the categories that I want to be selling? What are the kinds of brands? What are the price points? What does my customer want? Build out your merch plan. There is nothing more intimidating than walking a trade show floor or surfing online a trade show and being like, how do I find anything? How do I know what I'm looking for? That, I think, is the most important thing to consider. It's not too hard to get lost on a trade show floor, walking around aimlessly and being like, oh my God, I can't find anything. So the real benefit of taking this digitally is you have a chance to kind of search with some more intent, which ultimately, just a little secret here, is much easier than it is to walk around a trade show floor for 3 days and ultimately not know where you're going or what you're gonna find. But once you pull together your assortment plan, it's time to take it to the digital platforms. You're gonna wanna be able to search by product features. You're gonna wanna be able to search by categories, hopefully multiple categories for your store. I think that online stores right now should be diversifying what they're selling. It is all about creating trust and authenticity with one customer and providing them 360-degree options on what they're looking for. Today, being honest and authentic goes so much further than being myopic and only seeing what's in front of you. So as you're kind of looking at that product assortment, I really suggest asking yourself, can I bring in men's and women's? Should I be looking at women's and children? Should I be looking at women's and beauty, right? So what are the different cross sections of categories that you can actually triangulate to help create a meaningful experience? So for the foreseeable future, guys, we are going to have to be pushing ourselves forward to be able to think about how we create these digital experiences that are more meaningful. Here's the way in which I would approach it. You got your assortment plan. You're online on the show. You're like, all right, I'm on FashionGo. I'm going to search for all these things. I'm going to compile it. Maybe I'm actually going to then reach out to those people. Maybe I'm actually going to send them an email and say, hey, can you walk me through what you have, right? Can we have a conversation about fabric and fit? You know, it's not just as much as just clicking on things and then placing your order. It's okay to take a step further and understand who you're buying from. Today, we are leaning on each other to be more connected digitally and to be able to get on those Zoom calls and pick up the phone in order to find out more information. So don't be scared. Think of an online platform like that as an interface, a way to get through to people in a way that's easier and more specified. Almost like online dating, possibly. And when you're thinking about things like making it to the other side, you have a couple conversations. You talk about what you're looking for. You get on the phone. You see, hey, are we dating right now? Right? And then you place the buy. Maybe you order some samples. So again, it's not a matter of, hey, I'm going to have to buy this now and I'm spending 10 grand on this brand. Think of it as a conduit to help you filter, sort, and help you get to what you need faster. All right, so you've already launched your site. You are already engaged with vendors. You've got your site up and running and you're wondering, holy bananas, what do I do with all this stuff? That's typically what I like to call like an inventory scare, right? All of a sudden the reality of what's happened has set in. Probably starts to happen when merchandise starts hitting your home or your studio or your 3PL or wherever you're shipping out of. And inventory scares are totally valid and something that I think a lot of people get concerned with. And the thing that I think is so important to think about when you're scared of your inventory is ultimately what that inventory can do for you. So when you're looking at kind of inventory management, you know, it's important to understand, like, yes, you may have bought this item for $10, but you might be marking it up to $25, right? There's your margin. So keep in mind, you know, what that inventory is supposed to do for you in the long run. Stay focused on that. Now, if you have built your business on Shopify, which, gosh, so many people have, there are a number of tools and reporting systems that you can actually use to help you keep track. Looking at things like percentage of inventory sold will help you understand if your products are selling through quickly or not. When your store is first open, chances are you're checking on your inventory reports on a daily basis. Why? Because you probably are too stressed out to do anything else. You're trying to wait for that sale, so you're maybe overanalyzing it. But as time moves on, you're going to want to be looking at your inventory management on a weekly basis. What are the products I've sold through of? What are the categories that are performing well for me? How do I actually stop to pivot and be able to buy more of what's working for me, or put a POS or a markdown on something that's not working for me? It's not simply a matter of you get some product in at the beginning of the season, you let it ride itself out, and at the end of the season, you're wondering, oh my gosh, what do I do with all this stuff? It's a bit deeper than that. You say, here is my pool of inventory. Now, what am I going to do to help move it, right? What are the different ways in which I can move it? So controlling inventory is not just the numerical issue, but it's a marketing problem. And from that respect, on a marketing side, your newsletters become important. What key items are you pushing? What items are you going to put for your advertising strategy? Because that's really important. Are you going to be remarketing certain products that you know are going to be valuable for your customers? And how are you going to create content around those products so that the customer sees it in a new and exciting way? So think of your inventory as almost like a game of hot potato. You get it, and you got to get rid of it. And everything you have at your disposal will help you get through selling that stuff. So what are the tips on buying so that you don't feel like you've got this hot potato? There aren't too many. In fact, retail is a bit manic. And it's one of the exciting things that we love so much about it. It's also one of the things that drive us the most crazy. Why? We're dependent on so many people. We have the inventory coming from multiple vendors. We might have a 3PL or a fulfillment center that we're using to ship things out. We need to keep track of what's coming in, what's going, the sales. There are so many components to this that it actually makes it a total manic place to live and work in. However, we love it. It's in our bones. So buying tips on that are: be clear about what you're buying before you buy it. Get samples if you can. Make sure you have relationships with your vendors in case the products show up and they're damaged. Make sure that you have relationships with vendors in case you have to mark something down and you want to take markdown dollars. Make sure that you're actually taking a look at your inventory on a weekly basis so you know if you need to put that item on a POS, a markdown, or you need to be able to actually do something on your newsletter with it. Think of your inventory as the impetus for your marketing and your content. Without knowing what you're doing with your inventory and without having a robust marketing and media strategy, you might actually be sitting on the same $10 that you bought 6 months later without knowing what to do with it. So, best advice, guys, walk in with a plan, stay agile, know that you're in it for the mania, and enjoy the ride. So guys, when you're a new online store, chances are you got no idea what people are actually going to buy, right? You have some thoughts. Maybe you've done some customer surveys or you've gone out to speak to potential customers. Personally, at Scaling Retail, we do a lot of that with our brands. We make sure we go out and talk to customers. We make sure we find out why today is the day that they're going to shop with brands. What is the impetus for them to be able to make that purchase? Super important. But if you guys are launching and you don't have a lot of information, chances are it's a big hypothetical. It's a big hypothetical financially. It's a big hypothetical with your time, with your energy. It's a big hypothetical for everybody involved. So you're probably going to want to do some testing and experimentation. And when it comes to testing and experimentation, at the end of the day, it's about how do you stay agile? How do you stay light? Right? So beyond that vendor communication, beyond the inventory management and looking at it from that perspective, you're also going to want to ask yourself, how can I experiment and work with vendors to be able to do some testing? Right? So it's not just a matter of what do I have in and how do I get rid of it, but how can I actually create better experiments so I can find out and read what my customers are looking for before I make bigger financial investments. Now, when it comes to iterative changes of a brand, it's important to realize that you can go from A to B and it might feel comfortable for your customer, but to go from A to F, meaning so much further away from your original idea, can feel like a stretch. So when you're looking at creating these customer experiments with categories, I would suggest the following. Number one, make sure that you actually have spoken with a few vendors and those experimentations are going to fit together, meaning all those brands really work together. The second thing is be honest with your vendors. I'd say, hey guys, I want to test this out. What would make this meaningful for you guys as a buy? And then what would make this meaningful for us in terms of presentation? Now, the ball is really in their court because at the end of the day, No one knows how many units you have on hand. You might have 3 units on hand. The customer doesn't know. You might have 30 units on hand or 300 units. The customer has no idea. So the vendor actually has to believe in your vision. They have to believe in what you're trying to execute. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, they're then going to make the decision whether or not they want to do business with you. Yes, you might be buying from them, but if they don't want to sell to you, does it really matter how much money you have? Not really. So when it comes to testing new categories, make sure you're really focused on vendor relationships. It's really important for today's environment to take the time to get on that FaceTime call, get on that Zoom call, and really explain to someone what you're trying to create and do. And if you cannot enroll people into what you're doing, you may need to rethink the beginning portion of this, which is what's your brand DNA and who is it that you're actually selling to? Very, very important and simple things that you can do to shore that up. Now, once the store has been launched and you're looking to test new categories, easiest thing to do is to get on the phone with a couple of your customers and find out what they're looking for, right? Find out why they've shopped from you, what other things they might be interested in. Personally, I'm really excited whenever I get a chance to talk to customers because it gives me an opportunity to understand how they're going about thinking about your product or your brand in their life. Right? What is it that they're learning to come to your site for? What are the other things that they might want to purchase from you? Again, you can guess, it's another hypothesis, but why would you when you actually have the information pretty closely and accessible to you? I would suggest calling people who are not your friends or family, who already know you and who already love you. I'd suggest calling someone else. You can actually find out how do they find out about you and what are the things that they are looking and relying on you for. All right, let's bring this totally full circle. We have talked about pros and cons of launching online. These days, you kind of have to, right? So what your expectations should look like. How it's not going to be cheaper than having a brick and mortar store. You're going to have to invest a considerable amount of money on advertising, content, all of that, guys. You are media companies. Please do not forget that. We've also gone over the different ways of looking at buying strategies, inventory management and control, how to be thinking about doing these new buys digitally. What does that mean for you? Well, guys, chances are you're heading over to the FashionGo.net platform. Chances are you are scrolling through a lot of content. You are looking at all these different brands. Well, how do you organize that? How do you actually make that a meaningful experience for you? Chances are you might do your entire buy from one platform because it's so easy. And the best platforms are the ones that have been able to bring to you multiple categories, right? It makes it so much easier for inventory control, management, and to be able to secure those vendors through an actual, real relationship. There's a lot of reliability. And guys, transparency and authenticity, super important these days, right? Who do we trust? How do we trust a platform? How do we know that they're trusting and vetting their vendors, right? What are the levels that they're going through? So I think it's important that we look at the platform as a platform of trust and engagement. We also make sure that we're taking full advantage of the platform. So favoriting things, organizing it, using it for communications, being able to dive into a platform that can do 100% of things for you and only using 5% of it ultimately doesn't lead you to having a good experience. It never does. I remember when I first onboarded project management system, Asana, right? You guys are probably all familiar with Asana. Everyone uses it for project management. I remember going on there and I got stuck at 5%. And I was like, I can only do 5% of this. But really, the beauty of it comes in the 95%. After you make through the initial hurdles of trying to figure out how to do something, and you get into it and you get a groove, that's when the magic starts to happen. So when it comes to making these new transitions into shopping digitally and being able to place those buys and work with vendors, guys, go through it, struggle through it, make sure that you're actually organizing it, ask questions. And the thing that I think is so important that I think honestly most people don't ever want to do, including me, is ask for help. So if you have an issue with navigating the platform, the system, make sure you reach out to customer service. The whole intent behind these kinds of platforms is to really help you build and grow your business so these vendors can build and grow their business. We're in a day and age where synthesizing our needs and being able to work collectively together is more important than ever. And platforms that allow us to do that ultimately make for a really big win-win. All right, guys, that is all for me. Once again, I'm Syama Meaghar, CEO of Scaling Retail. I launch and build businesses globally. In fact, guys, just launched a multi-line retail store coming out of Tanzania, right? Shipping globally in the middle of all of this craziness. People are launching, they're growing, they are scaling. They are finding ways to innovate through challenges. So take this as an opportunity, if you feel so inclined to take a risk on your business and on your idea. Just please do so smart. Do so by struggling through your pain points. Go after the resources that you know are available to you and make sure that you know you're not alone. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.